Emily, are you sure about this? My best friend Sarah's voice quivered with concern as she gripped my arm, her eyes darting nervously between me and the ornate double doors of the church. I smoothed down my white gown, took a deep breath, and nodded. Of course I'm sure. Why wouldn't I be? Sarah bit her lip, hesitating. There's something you need to know about Josh. I saw him with another woman last week. My heart skipped a beat, but I forced a laugh. Don't be silly, Sarah. Josh loves me. He'd never do that. Emily, please listen. The wedding march began to play, drowning out Sarah's words. I plastered on a smile and stepped into the aisle, my father at my side. As we walked, I caught glimpses of familiar faces, my mother Diana, dabbing at her eyes, Josh's parents beaming with pride, our college friends grinning and waving. And there at the altar stood Josh, handsome in his tuxedo, a soft smile playing on his lips. My Josh, my soon-to-be husband. As I reached him, he took my hands in his. You look beautiful, he whispered. The ceremony passed in a blur. I barely heard the minister's words, too caught up in Josh's eyes and the warmth of his hands. When it came time for our vows, Josh's voice rang out clear and strong. Emily, from the moment I met you, I knew you were the one. I promised to love you, cherish you, and be faithful to you for all the days of our lives. A flicker of doubt crossed my mind at the word faithful, but I pushed it away. This was our perfect day. Nothing could ruin it. As we exited the church amid a shower of rice and cheers, I caught sight of Sarah. She stood apart from the crowd, her face etched with worry. I turned away, focusing instead on Josh's arm around my waist as we climbed into the waiting limo. The reception was a whirlwind of toasts, dances, and laughter. As Josh and I swayed to our first dance, I rested my head on his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. I love you, I murmured. I love you too, he replied, but something in his tone made me pull back slightly. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. Later, as we mingled with guests, I overheard a snippet of conversation between two of Josh's coworkers. Can't believe he went through with it, one of them said. I know, right? After what happened with Melissa. They fell silent as they noticed me nearby. I frowned, trying to place the name Melissa. Hadn't that been Josh's assistant who'd quit suddenly last month? As the night wore on, a creeping unease settled in my stomach. I found myself watching Josh more closely, noticing how his gaze sometimes lingered on other women, how he seemed to avoid being alone with me for too long. Finally, as the last guests were leaving, I cornered him near the coat check. Josh, we need to talk, I said, my voice low and urgent. He raised an eyebrow. About what? About us. About faithfulness. Sarah told me she saw you with another woman. Josh's face darkened. Emily, it's our wedding night. Do you really want to start our marriage with accusations? I faltered, suddenly unsure. No, I just want the truth. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. The truth is, I love you. Isn't that enough? Before I could respond, he pulled me into a kiss. It was passionate, demanding, and for a moment I forgot my doubts. But as we broke apart, I caught a glimpse of something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt quickly masked. As we left the reception hall, hand in hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. But it was too late now. For better or worse, I was Mrs. Emily Carter. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would test my love, my strength, and ultimately, my capacity for revenge. The shrill cry of a baby pierced the air, jolting me awake. I groaned, glancing at the clock. 3:17 a.m. Again! I nudged Josh, but he merely grunted and rolled over. With a sigh, I hauled myself out of bed and shuffled to the nursery. Lily was wailing in her crib, her face scrunched up and red. I scooped her up, praying her cries wouldn't wake Laura. Shush, sweetie, I murmured, rocking her gently. Mommy's here. As I settled into the rocking chair to nurse Lily, I couldn't help but marvel at how much my life had changed in just 2 years. The twins' arrival had been a whirlwind of joy and exhaustion, but I'd hoped it would bring Josh and me closer. Instead, It felt like we were drifting further apart. The next morning, I stumbled into the kitchen bleary-eyed from another night of broken sleep. Josh was already there, impeccably dressed in his suit, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. "Morning," I mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. He barely looked up. "I've got a big presentation today. I'll be home late." Again. I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. "Josh, we hardly see you anymore. The girls dash." "The girls are fine." He cut me off. "You're doing a great job with them. That's your job now, remember?" I bit my lip, stung by his dismissive tone. Before I could respond, Laura's cries echoed from the nursery. Josh stood up, gathering his briefcase. "I've got to go. Good luck with the twins today." As the front door slammed behind him, I felt a familiar wave of loneliness wash over me. This wasn't how I'd imagined our life together. Later that afternoon, I was trying to fold laundry while keeping an eye on the twins playing on the floor. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, Diana. "How are you holding up, sweetie? Want me to come over?" I hesitated, then replied, "That would be great, Mom. Thanks." An hour later, Diana bustled through the door, arms laden with groceries. "I thought you could use a home-cooked meal," she said, giving me a warm hug. As she played with the girls, I found myself pouring out my frustrations about Josh's absence and indifference. Diana listened sympathetically, her brow furrowed with concern. "Have you tried talking to him about how you feel?" she asked gently. I nodded, blinking back tears. "He just doesn't seem to care. It's like we're not even a family to him." Diana squeezed my hand. "Oh, honey, you deserve so much better than this." Just then, the front door opened and Josh walked in. He paused, taking in the scene, Diana on the floor with the twins, me with red-rimmed eyes. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone sharp. "I invited Mom over for dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I thought it would be nice for the girls to see their grandmother." Josh's jaw tightened. "You should have asked me first. I told you I had a big day today. I'm not in the mood for company." Diana stood up, her expression hardening. "Josh, Emily is your wife, not your employee. She doesn't need your permission to invite her own mother over." "This is my house," Josh snapped. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd stay out of our business." I gasped, shocked by his rudeness. "Josh, apologize to my mother right now." Instead, he turned on his heel and stormed upstairs. The sound of the bedroom door slamming made both babies start crying. As I rushed to comfort the twins, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired, defeated. But underneath the exhaustion, I saw a flicker of something else, determination. In that moment, I realized things couldn't go on like this. Something had to change. And if Josh wasn't willing to change, then maybe I needed to be the one to take action. Little did I know, that realization was the first step on a path that would change all our lives forever. The days blurred together in a haze of diaper changes, feedings, and stolen moments of sleep. Josh's presence in our home became increasingly rare, his excuses for late nights at the office growing more elaborate. I found myself sinking deeper into a pit of loneliness and resentment. One particularly trying afternoon, with both girls wailing inconsolably, I reached my breaking point. I dialed Josh's number, praying he'd pick up. "Emily, I'm in a meeting," he answered, his voice clipped. "Josh, please." I begged, my voice cracking. "I need help. The girls won't stop crying and I dash." "Handle it, Emily," he interrupted. "That's your job now, remember? I'm working to provide for this family." The line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief, hot tears streaming down my face. In that moment, the weight of my isolation crashed down on me. Desperate for a lifeline, I called my mother. "Mom," I sobbed, "can you come over? I can't do this alone anymore." Diana arrived within the hour, her face etched with concern. She took in the scene, the crying babies, the messy house, my disheveled appearance, and immediately sprang into action. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, pulling me into a hug. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" As she helped me settle the twins, I poured out my heart. The loneliness, Josh's indifference, the growing chasm in our marriage, it all came tumbling out. I feel like I'm drowning, Mom, I confessed. Josh is never here, and when he is, it's like he can't stand to be around us. What if he regrets having the girls? Diana's eyes flashed with anger. That's no excuse for abandoning his responsibilities as a father and husband. You deserve better, Emily. Her words struck a chord. For the first time, I allowed myself to truly consider the possibility that Josh's behavior wasn't just a phase. It was who he'd become. That evening, after my mother left and the girls were finally asleep, I heard Josh's key in the lock. I steeled myself for confrontation, determined to make him understand the toll his absence was taking. "Josh, we need to talk," I said as he walked in. He sighed, loosening his tie. "Can it wait? I'm exhausted." "No, it can't," I insisted, my voice stronger than I felt. "You're never here, Josh. The girls barely know you. I'm struggling and you don't seem to care." His face hardened. "I'm working my ass off to provide for this family. What more do you want from me?" "I want a partner," I cried. "Someone who shares the load, who's present for his children." "Is that too much to ask?" Josh's eyes narrowed. "Maybe if you were more competent at handling things, I wouldn't need to work so much." His words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, shocked by the venom in his voice. "How dare you?" I whispered. "I've given up everything for this family. My career, my independence dash." "No one asked you to do that," he snapped. "If you're so unhappy, maybe you should just leave." The silence that followed was deafening. We stared at each other, the gulf between us suddenly vast and unbridgeable. "Maybe I should," I finally said, my voice barely audible. Something flickered in Josh's eyes, surprise? Regret? But it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold indifference. "Do what you want," he muttered, brushing past me towards the stairs. "I'm going to bed." As I watched him go, a strange calm settled over me. In that moment, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for so long. The man I married was gone. In his place was a stranger who cared more about his job than his family. I looked around at the home we'd built together, now feeling more like a prison than a sanctuary. And I knew, with a certainty that both terrified and exhilarated me, that something had to change. Tomorrow, I decided I would start planning my escape. The morning after our confrontation, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. Josh had already left for work, leaving the house in eerie silence. As I went through the motions of caring for Lily and Laura, my mind raced with plans and possibilities. I needed to talk to someone, to make sure I wasn't overreacting. With trembling hands, I dialed my best friend Sarah's number. "Emily? Is everything okay?" Sarah's concerned voice came through the line. I don't know," I admitted. "Can you come over? I need your advice." An hour later, Sarah sat across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes wide as I recounted the events of the past few months. The twins napped peacefully in the next room, blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding them. "Oh, Sarah sighed, reaching for my hand. "I'm so sorry. I should have pushed harder when I saw Josh with that woman before your wedding. I didn't want to ruin your big day." I froze, her words hitting me like a bucket of ice water. "What? What woman?" Sarah's face paled as she realized her slip. I thought you knew. Remember when I tried to talk to you before the ceremony? I saw Josh with his assistant, Melissa. They were intimate." The room spun around me as the pieces fell into place. Melissa's sudden departure, Josh's late nights at the office, his emotional distance. It all made horrifying sense. "He's been cheating on me," I whispered, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "All this time." Sarah squeezed my hand. "What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Josh. "Big client dinner tonight. Don't wait up." Something inside me snapped. I stood up abruptly, startling Sarah. "I'm going to his office," I declared. "I need to see for myself." Despite Sarah's protests, I was resolute. She agreed to watch the twins, and I found myself driving to Josh's workplace, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached his office, I heard muffled voices and laughter. I recognized Josh's voice along with a woman's. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door. The scene before me confirmed my worst fears. Josh sat on his desk, his shirt unbuttoned, while a young woman, presumably his new assistant, stood between his legs, her hands on his chest. They both turned to me, shock evident on their faces. Josh recovered first, pushing the woman away and standing up. "Emily," he said, his voice cold. "What are you doing here?" I stared at him, my vision blurring with tears of rage and betrayal. "How could you?" I whispered. Josh's face hardened. "This is my workplace. You have no right to barge in here like this." His callousness in the face of his betrayal was the final straw. "No right," I repeated, my voice rising. "I'm your wife, the mother of your children. Or have you forgotten about us in your quest to climb the corporate ladder and bed every assistant who crosses your path?" Josh's eyes flashed dangerously. He grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. "You're making a scene," he hissed. "Go home, Emily. We'll discuss this later." I wrenched my arm free, suddenly aware that several of Josh's coworkers had gathered in the hallway, watching the drama unfold. "There's nothing to discuss," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my body. "We're done, Josh. I won't let you treat me like this anymore." As I turned to leave, Josh called out, his voice laced with venom. "You're nothing without me, Emily. You're just an incompetent housewife. How will you survive on your own?" I paused at the door, looking back at the man I once loved. In that moment, I saw him clearly for the first time. Not as the charming, successful husband I'd thought I married, but as a cruel, selfish individual who cared for no one but himself. "Watch me," I said quietly, and walked out of his office and his life. As I drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I knew there was no turning back. The life I had known was over. But as terrifying as that thought was, I felt a glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my own destiny. Tomorrow, I decided I would start planning my new life for myself and for my daughters. The days following my confrontation with Josh at his office were a blur of frantic planning and heart-wrenching decisions. I moved through our house like a ghost, packing essentials for the girls and myself while Josh maintained a cold, stony silence. One evening, as I was putting the twins to bed, I heard Josh's heavy footsteps on the stairs. My heart raced as he appeared in the nursery doorway, his face a mask of barely contained anger. "So, you're really going through with this?" he sneered, eyeing the half-packed suitcases in the corner. I straightened my spine, meeting his gaze. "Yes, Josh, I am." He stepped closer, his presence looming over me. "And where do you think you'll go? How will you support yourself and the girls?" "I'll figure it out," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Anything's better than staying here with you." Josh's eyes flashed dangerously. He grabbed my arm, yanking me closer. "You're not taking my daughters anywhere," he hissed. Fear coursed through me, but I refused to show it. "Let go of me, Josh," I said firmly. Instead, his grip tightened. "You're nothing without me, Emily. Nothing. Who do you think will want a washed-up housewife with 2 kids?" As if on cue, Lily began to cry, startled by the tension in the room. Josh released me abruptly, stepping back. "This isn't over," he warned before storming out. My hands shaking, I soothed Lily back to sleep. Once the girls were settled, I retreated to the guest room where I'd been sleeping and called my mother. "Mom," I whispered, trying to keep my voice down. "I need your help. Can you come get us tomorrow?" Diana's response was immediate. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be there first thing in the morning." The next day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. I moved quietly through the house, gathering last-minute items and documents. Josh had already left for work, his departure marked by the slam of the front door. As I was making a final sweep of the bedroom, something caught my eye. Josh's laptop, usually locked away in his briefcase, sat open on the dresser. A moment of curiosity overcame me, and I found myself scrolling through his emails. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Emails to his lawyer discussing ways to get full custody of the twins. Plans to freeze our joint accounts. Correspondence with his company's HR department about removing me from his health insurance. He had been planning to leave me all along, but on his terms, leaving me with nothing. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of the emails. Just as I finished, I heard a car pull up outside. "Mom!" I rushed downstairs, the twins already dressed and ready in their playpen. As I opened the front door, relief washed over me at the sight of my mother's concerned face. "Oh, Emily," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "It's going to be okay." We quickly loaded the car with our belongings. As I buckled the girls into their car seats, a neighbor called out, "Everything all right, Emily?" I hesitated, then made a split-second decision. "No," I said clearly. "But it will be." As we pulled away from the house, I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never let Josh control me or my daughters again. "Mom," I said, my voice steady. "I need to stop by a lawyer's office. There's something I need to show them." Diana nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Of course, dear. We'll face this together." As we drove away from the life I had known, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. Little did I know, the evidence I had discovered on Josh's laptop would be the key to not just securing my future, but to exposing the true nature of the man I had once loved. The first few weeks at my mother's house were a whirlwind of legal meetings, sleepless nights, and the constant, gnawing fear of what Josh might do next. Diana was my rock, helping with the twins and offering words of encouragement when I felt like I was drowning. One morning, as I sat at the kitchen table, poring over divorce papers, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart stopped as I read the message. "I know what you did. Meet me at the park in an hour, or Josh finds out everything." My hands shook as I showed the message to my mother. "What does this mean?" I whispered. "What could I have done?" Diana's face paled. "Emily, you can't go. It could be dangerous." But curiosity and fear won out. "I have to know, Mom. Can you watch the girls?" An hour later, I found myself sitting on a park bench, my eyes darting nervously around. Suddenly, a familiar figure approached Melissa, Josh's former assistant. "Emily," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry for the cryptic message. I needed to talk to you." As Melissa sat beside me, her story came tumbling out. She and Josh had indeed been having an affair, but it wasn't just that. Josh had been embezzling money from the company, and Melissa had helped him cover it up. "He promised we'd run away together," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But then he fired me and threatened to pin everything on me if I spoke up." My mind reeled. "Why are you telling me this?" Melissa pulled out a USB drive. "Because I kept records of everything. Emails, bank transfers, all of it. I thought, maybe you could use it." I stared at the small device, understanding the weight of what she was offering. "Melissa, this could ruin him." She nodded grimly. "I know. But after what he did to both of us, doesn't he deserve it?" As I clutched the USB drive, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Josh. "Where are the girls?" his message read. "I'm at my mother's house. You can't keep them from me." Panic surged through me. I jumped up, barely remembering to thank Melissa before racing back to my car. The drive to my mother's house was a blur. When I arrived, I found Josh pounding on the front door, shouting demands. "Josh!" I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. "Stop this right now." He whirled to face me, his eyes blazing with anger. "Where are my daughters, Emily? You have no right to take them." "I have every right," I shot back. "Especially after everything you've done." Josh's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "What are you talking about?" In that moment, something inside me snapped. All the fear, all the pain, all the anger I'd been holding back came rushing to the surface. I know everything, Josh, I hissed. The affair, the embezzlement, all of it. And if you don't let go of me right now, I swear I'll make sure everyone else knows too. Shock and fear flashed across his face. He released my arm, stumbling backward. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice wavered. I held up the USB drive. Want to bet? For a moment we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, without another word, Josh turned and stormed off to his car. As I watched him drive away, I felt a strange mix of triumph and terror. I had stood up to him, yes, but I knew this was far from over. Josh wouldn't give up easily, and now he knew I had leverage. I walked into the house on shaky legs, finding my mother and the twins safe in the living room. Diana rushed to embrace me. "Oh, Emily," she breathed. "Are you all right? What happened?" I sank onto the couch, the weight of everything crashing down on me. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I think I just started a war." As I held my daughters close, I realized that the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time, I felt ready to fight. Not just for myself, but for the future my girls deserved. The morning after my confrontation with Josh, I woke to a barrage of missed calls and text messages. My hands shook as I scrolled through them, each one more threatening than the last. "You'll regret this, Emily. I'll take everything from you. You're nothing without me." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. With trembling fingers, I dialed my lawyer's number. "Emily," she answered, her voice tense. "I was about to call you. Josh's lawyers are pushing for an emergency custody hearing. They're claiming you're an unfit mother." My heart plummeted. "What? How can they do that? They're using your sudden departure as evidence of instability. Emily, we need to act fast." As I hung up, my mother appeared in the doorway, her face etched with concern. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. "He's trying to take the girls, Mom. I can't lose them." Diana wrapped me in a fierce hug. "We won't let that happen. It's time to fight fire with fire." With renewed determination, I pulled out the USB drive Melissa had given me. "You're right. It's time to expose Josh for who he really is." Over the next few hours, I pored over the files, my shock growing with each revelation. Not only had Josh been embezzling money, but he'd been using company funds to finance a lavish lifestyle with multiple mistresses. As I compiled the evidence, a plan began to form. I reached out to Sarah, who worked in media relations. "Emily, are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. "Once this goes public, there's no going back." I glanced at a photo of my daughters on the nightstand. "I'm sure. It's time the world saw the real Josh Carter." That evening, as Josh prepared to appear on a local news segment about his company's latest philanthropic efforts, I made my move. I sent a carefully crafted email to every major news outlet in the city, attaching video evidence of Josh's abusive behavior towards me, along with proof of his financial misdeeds. My phone began ringing off the hook almost immediately. Reporters, Josh's company executives, even old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. But I ignored them all, my eyes glued to the TV screen. I watched, heart pounding, as the news anchor's expression shifted mid-interview. She touched her earpiece, then turned to Josh with a steely gaze. "Mr. Carter, we've just received some disturbing information about you and your company. Would you care to comment on allegations of embezzlement and domestic abuse?" The color drained from Josh's face. He stammered, trying to deflect, but the damage was done. Within minutes, the story had gone viral. As social media exploded with outrage and support, I felt a strange mix of vindication and terror. I had done it. I had exposed Josh's true nature to the world. But at what cost? My phone buzzed with a text from Josh. "You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy." Before I could process my swirling emotions, there was a loud banging at the front door. I rushed downstairs to find Josh, wild-eyed and reeking of alcohol. "How could you do this to me?" he roared, pushing past me into the house. "Josh, you need to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The girls are sleeping." He lunged forward, grabbing my shoulders. "Those girls are mine, Emily. You can't take them from me." As Josh's grip tightened, I heard a small voice behind me. "Mommy!" We both turned to see Lily standing at the foot of the stairs, her eyes wide with fear. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I wrenched myself free from Josh's grasp and stood between him and our daughter. "Get out!" I hissed, my voice low and dangerous. "Get out now, or I swear I'll make you regret ever laying a hand on me." Josh stumbled backward, the fight suddenly gone from his eyes. As he retreated, I scooped Lily into my arms, my heart racing. I had won this battle, but as I held my trembling daughter, I realized the war was far from over. The real challenge lay ahead, rebuilding our lives in the aftermath of this storm. But for the first time in years, I felt truly strong. I had faced my greatest fear and come out the other side. Whatever came next, I knew I could handle it. For my girls, for myself, I would rise from these ashes stronger than ever. The weeks following Josh's public downfall were a whirlwind of legal battles, media scrutiny, and emotional upheaval. But as the dust began to settle, I found myself standing on the precipice of a new life, one I had never dared to imagine. The final custody hearing loomed before me like a mountain I had to climb. As I entered the courtroom, my heart pounding, I caught sight of Josh. He looked haggard, a shadow of the powerful executive he once was. For a moment our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved. But then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. The judge called the court to order, and I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would determine the course of our lives. As the proceedings unfolded, Josh's lawyer painted me as an unstable, vindictive woman who had orchestrated his client's downfall out of spite. I gripped the edge of my seat, fighting back tears. But then it was my turn. With shaking hands, I presented the evidence of Josh's abuse, his neglect, his infidelity. I spoke of the lonely nights, the constant fear, the struggle to protect my daughters from their father's indifference. "Your Honor," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, "I'm not here to destroy Josh. I'm here to save my children and myself." The courtroom fell silent as the judge deliberated. When she finally spoke, her words washed over me like a tidal wave. "Full custody is granted to Emily Carter, with supervised visitation for Joshua Carter pending completion of anger management and parenting classes." Relief flooded through me, so intense I could barely stand. As the courtroom erupted in murmurs, I turned to my mother, who enveloped me in a fierce hug. "You did it, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're free." As we left the courthouse, a crowd of reporters surged forward. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Ms. Carter, how do you feel about the verdict? What's next for you and your daughters? Do you have any words for other women in abusive relationships?" I paused, considering the last question. Then, looking directly into the nearest camera, I spoke from my heart. "To anyone out there who's afraid, who feels trapped or powerless, you're stronger than you know. It's not easy to leave, to start over. But you deserve happiness. You deserve peace. And you are not alone." As the words left my mouth, I realized I wasn't just speaking to others. I was speaking to myself, to the woman I had been just months ago. In the days that followed, opportunities one never expected began to unfold. A women's shelter reached out, asking if I'd be willing to share my story with their residents. A local community college offered me a chance to finish my degree with a flexible schedule that would allow me to care for the twins. One evening, as I sat on my mother's porch watching Lily and Laura play in the yard, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. "You know," my mother said, joining me with a cup of tea, "I always knew you had this strength in you. I'm so proud of the woman you've become." I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the yard, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the fear, the moments of despair, they had all led to this. I had faced my greatest challenges and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I ever thought possible. I was no longer Josh Carter's wife, defined by his success and controlled by his whims. I was Emily Carter, mother, daughter, survivor. And my story was just beginning. Looking at my daughters, their laughter ringing out in the twilight, I made a silent promise. We would build a new life together, one filled with love, respect, and endless possibilities. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, and she was ready to soar. As I tucked the girls into bed that night, Lily looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes. "Mommy, are we happy now?" I kissed her forehead, my heart full. "Yes, sweetheart. We're happy now. And we're going to be even happier tomorrow." And for the first time in years, I knew that promise was one I could keep.
My daughter has always wanted to work for a publishing company since she was a young child. That dream has now at last materialized. My daughter once requested if she could throw a welcome party for my restaurant's new hires. However, Anthony called me at the last minute to cancel right before the party started. I took up the phone and called my daughter's boss after witnessing her sob. "I'm going to cancel our contract with your company." "What?" "John is my name. I am currently the CEO of a chain of exclusive restaurants. My parents were very busy, but we weren't a particularly rich or impoverished family. My mother was a manager at a small to medium-sized business, and my father was employed by a foreign corporation. Thus, on most days, they both departed early for work. They typically arrived home after 9 p.m., even if they arrived early. As a result, I ended up handling the majority of the housework." "Really? That must have been difficult." The kitchen crew was very interested in my narrative and listened carefully. "Yes, indeed. It was hard juggling it with school. However, the house would have been a mess if I hadn't done it. It's similar to how people who live alone all of a sudden learn how to take care of themselves." "I understand. Did you discover the allure of cooking as a result of your experience with housework and decide to pursue this career path?" "Oh, although I didn't detest cooking, it wasn't the reason I entered this line of work." "Really? What was the cause, then?" "Really, it's nothing noteworthy. Both of my parents were busy, as I mentioned, but a person can only handle so much. My mom became ill one day as a result of working too much." "Oh, I'm sorry for asking personal questions." "No, everything is all right. She is presently doing great, and it was only temporary. However, I prepared some food for her at the time. I'm not sure what it was, but it was definitely some sort of porridge." "I see. It made her very pleased. She insisted that it was great and devoured it all, despite the fact that she wasn't feeling well and didn't have much of an appetite. It dawned on me then. I think I fell in love with food at that very moment." "What a lovely story." "Actually, thanks." Our break ended as we were speaking, and we resumed our work. We closed without any problems because it was a weekday and business wasn't too busy. One of the employees who had been listening to my story earlier approached me as we prepared to depart. They seemed interested in learning more about my history. We made the decision to carry on the discussion at a local bar. "Are you truly that interested in my life?" "You know, the story isn't exactly a dramatic roller coaster." "That's all right. I find it useful to hear about someone who started a firm from the ground up. I might even be able to mold my own future with it." "All okay." "Okay, so where did I end up?" "You were talking about how you first got into this industry, right? Let's pick up from there." I then began thinking back on the past. I studied cooking and kept up with housework until I graduated from high school. I was able to persuade my parents to allow me to enroll in culinary school once I graduated. My dad was a bit of an academic, so convincing him was difficult, but my mom was on board from the beginning. I worked at a number of restaurants to refine my talents after graduating from culinary school. I eventually trained in a famous restaurant for roughly 7 years before becoming self-sufficient in my 30s. "I see. And now you're the CEO of a restaurant group with 10 locations in the city. That's impressive. It's a bit embarrassing to say it myself, so thanks for putting it that way. Does training in a prestigious restaurant really make that much of a difference in skill development?" "Absolutely. The environment around you has a much bigger impact than you might think." "Thanks for sharing. I really learned a lot." We continued chatting casually for about an hour before calling it a night. I'm glad they see me as a role model, but maybe I should have been more honest about the hardships too. Still, I didn't want to put a damper on their enthusiasm. Now, I am the CEO of a restaurant group with 10 locations in the city. By most standards, I am considered successful. But I have sacrificed many things to get to this point. I sacrificed my teenage years, friendships I could have formed during my school days, relationships that could have lasted a lifetime, and even my family. It was back when I had just started my own business. At that time, I was already married. But since I was an unknown person trying to go independent, I prioritized work over family. Back then, nothing mattered more than getting the restaurant up and running. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night, if that. Thanks to those efforts and a bit of luck, I managed to build the position I have today. But I'm fully aware that I caused a lot of trouble for my family in the process. Since neither my wife nor my daughter ever complained, I let that become an excuse to neglect them. To others, I probably looked like a lousy dad who abandoned his family. And honestly, I can't make any excuses for that. Reflecting on my life so far, I headed home. My wife, Mary, was already asleep, while my daughter, Sarah, was staring at her laptop in the living room. I'm home. Oh, Dad. Welcome back. You're home later than usual. I went out for drinks with the staff. What are you doing up so late, Sarah? Just working on a college assignment. I took it easy after finishing job hunting, and suddenly I realized I had a ton of work piled up. Ugh, my neck hurts. Oh, I see. But why are you working in the living room? You've got your desktop computer in your room, right? Actually, the air conditioner broke. I can still sleep in there, but doing assignments without the air conditioner in this heat would make me overheat before the computer does. That makes sense. Did you already call for repairs? Yeah, but since it's a busy season, they won't come until the beginning of next week. That sounds rough. You can lay out a blanket and sleep here if you want. Really? Thanks. Of course. Just don't overdo it, okay? Got it. And with that, Sarah went back to staring at her laptop. As I took a bath and got ready for bed, I heard Sarah's voice coming from the living room. Ah, finally done. Oh, you finished? Yeah, it's 11:47 now. If I had been a little slower, all my hard work would have been for nothing. Wait, was the deadline today? Of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so desperate. If I ended up repeating a year because I didn't have enough credits, all the job hunting would have been for nothing. By the way, where are you going to work again? Oh, didn't I tell you? A publishing company. It's not a big one, though. A publishing company, huh? That suits you. Sarah has always been passionate about books. Ever since elementary school, she would spend any free time in the library or a nearby bookstore. She even went on to study literature in college. All right, I'm going to bed. I have an early class tomorrow. All right, good night. The next day at work, one of the staff members who had gone out drinking with me yesterday rushed over. Thank you for yesterday. I really learned a lot from our conversation. No problem. I'm happy to share if it helps. Thanks. Oh, and guess what? When I got home last night, I found a wedding invitation from a high school friend. I hadn't thought much about it before, but I guess it's around the time people start settling down. That's great news. Yeah, around this age, a lot of people start thinking about family. Speaking of family, your daughter Sarah is graduating this year or next. Has she decided on her career path yet? Funny you mention it. I just asked her last night. She's decided to work for a publishing company. Oh, that's great. It sounds like she's really thought about her future. I guess she didn't want to get into this industry, huh? Well, to be honest, I did hope she might. But from her perspective, the restaurant business probably seemed like something that always took priority over her. I guess it doesn't hold the best memories for her. I see. But that's just my selfish thinking. I'll support Sarah's decision wholeheartedly. Yeah, that sounds like the right move. And then, 6 months later, Sarah successfully completed all her credits, confirming her graduation. Starting in April, she would finally be working at her long-awaited publishing company. Today, to celebrate Sarah's graduation and new job, the whole family went to a nearby restaurant. Congratulations, Sarah. When you were buried in college assignments, I was really worried you wouldn't make it to graduation. But it looks like you pulled it off. Yes, seriously. I have to admit, my last-minute concentration was pretty impressive. I'm so glad for you, Sarah. Getting a job at a publishing company. Ever since you were little, you were always reading whenever you had free time. Thanks, Mom. Now that you mention it, that's true. Do you have anything specific you want to do at the publishing company? Well, I'd like to work in the planning department, I think. I haven't really figured out what kind of projects I want to work on, though. I see. I'm looking forward to the day I can read a book that you planned. Me too. Thank you, both of you. After that, we continued chatting about random things, and the celebration came to an end. Then, 2 weeks later, Sarah graduated from college without any issues and started working at the publishing company in April. Sarah was assigned to the sales department. Apparently, at her company, all new employees are placed in sales for about a year before being assigned to their actual departments. Sales is really tough. Hearing about it and actually doing it are two completely different things. Is it hard to land contracts? Yeah, kind of. I'm right in the middle in terms of performance, but I'm not making much progress. Well, want me to give you some tips on sales? Wait, Dad, you know about sales? What do you mean? Wait. What's with that reaction? Well, you don't really do sales-related work, right? Not now, but when I first went independent, I didn't have any connections. So I went around doing sales nonstop. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, I'll take any advice you've got. So I decided to share some sales tips with Sarah. It wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was simply a common tactic of targeting customers on rainy days, especially on days with heavy rain. That's the best. Is that because it makes the client think, if they went out of their way to come in this weather, I should at least hear them out. Exactly. If you can secure a contract, that's even better. But even just getting them to listen gives you an advantage. After that, it's all about your skills. Do you think people would really think that way? Not everyone, of course. But people aren't always that logical. You know how some people say they made a deal just because they like the person? It's kind of like that. Got it. I'll give it a shot since you suggested it. After that, Sarah started incorporating my advice into her sales approach. Since she was naturally good at talking to people, once she managed to set up a meeting, closing the deal wasn't too difficult. As a result, her performance started improving rapidly. In the end, she managed to rank in the top 5% among her peers. 1 year has passed since Sarah joined the company. The 1-year sales period ended, and it was finally time for her official department assignment. While some people didn't get into their preferred departments, Sarah successfully landed a spot in the planning department, just as she had hoped. She was over the moon, having wanted this assignment since before she joined. I can't believe I actually got into the planning department. Everyone wanted that spot, so I wasn't sure how it would turn out. But I'm so happy. That's great. It means the higher-ups recognized your hard work. I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. My performance improved after you taught me that trick. Glad to hear it. I wasn't sure if it would work for you, but it looks like it did. Guess that's the daughter of a pro for you. Haha, fair point. Now that you're in the planning department, it's actually possible that I'll get to see a book you planned someday. Yeah, I don't know when I'll get to lead a project myself, though. Still, I'll be looking forward to it. Now that Sarah was part of the planning department, she devoted herself to her work even more. She took on even the smallest tasks without complaint, doing everything she could to make projects succeed. It was clear to anyone watching how dedicated she was. About a year had passed since she joined the planning department. Finally, Sarah was selected as one of the project planning members, allowing her to put her ideas into action. Then Sarah collaborated on a publication project for her company and a partnership with a well-known corporation, both of which turned out to be huge successes. Among them, Sarah's idea stood out and was exceptionally well received, becoming an unprecedented hit within the company. I can't believe it was that popular. Honestly, I just blurted out what came to mind without overthinking it. Sometimes that's how it works. Ideas that resonate with people often come naturally. In the world of artists, it's not uncommon for a song made on a whim while drinking to become a bigger hit than something they spend a week perfecting. Is that how it is? Yeah, that's how it is. But you know, being a working adult is harder than I thought. Honestly, I kind of expected that once I got into the planning department, I'd have more freedom to work on the projects I wanted. Well, companies are profit-driven after all. There are many situations where logic and the company's interests take precedence over personal freedom and feelings. Looking back, I guess the whole year in sales was meant to help me understand that. I didn't fully grasp it at the time, though. That's normal. Not many people truly understand that in their first year on the job. Fair enough. But actually, there's something I wanted to ask you today. Something you want to ask me? Her request was to do a tie-up project between my restaurant and her company. Apparently, since the previous collaboration with a well-known corporation was a big hit, her company wanted to pursue a similar concept this time around. I see. I understand how the project came about. Thanks. So what do you think? As your father, I'd love to say yes right away, but since it's a business partnership between companies, I can't make a decision on the spot. Oh, I know. I'm not asking you to decide right now. I just wanted to let you know that this is one of the ideas being considered. Got it. Since it's a branding issue, I'll discuss it with my company and get back to you. All right. I'm looking forward to a positive response. With that, the conversation ended for the moment. Over the next few days, we carefully considered whether the tie-up would damage our brand image and whether it would bring any benefits. Still, it's really well thought out. The proposal shows respect for the collaborating company, rather than just using them for profit. Honestly, I'd love to have someone like Sarah working for us. In the end, we concluded that the benefits of accepting the proposal outweighed the risks, so we decided to move forward with the tie-up, presenting a few conditions. So we decided to accept the tie-up proposal with some conditions. I guess your company has already told you? Yeah, thanks for agreeing. Honestly, everyone in my department thought it was a long shot. Well, the proposal was well prepared. I judged that the potential downsides were minimal. By the way, was it your idea to collaborate with my restaurant? Yeah, the idea to team up with your restaurant was mine. I just suggested it though. The senior members helped fine-tune the details. I thought so. It seemed a bit too polished for something you came up with alone. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Oh, don't worry. You'll learn the finer points as you gain experience. No need to stress about it. At Sarah's request, we agreed not to disclose our father-daughter relationship, as it could lead to complications, including jealousy from colleagues. Yeah, if people knew we were related, it would just cause unnecessary trouble. It's better this way. In addition to the tie-up proposal, Sarah asked if she could use my restaurant next Wednesday. Apparently, they were planning a welcome party for new team members, and she wanted to use my restaurant as the venue. Would it be okay? I really want to make it a special event to welcome them properly. For my beloved daughter, of course. Wednesday shouldn't be a problem. Really? Everyone's going to be so happy. Thanks. I caused you a lot of trouble back then. It's not much of a way to make up for it, but this much I can do now. What kind of dishes should I prepare? Thinking about Sarah's excitement, I started making preparations. Finally, the day of the welcome party arrived. Sarah, who needed to coordinate the party, arrived at the restaurant a bit earlier. Since I had reserved the entire place for the event, I was busy setting things up. But about 5 minutes before the scheduled time, I started to feel something was off. Hey Sarah, it's almost time, but no one's here yet. Are you sure everything's okay? Yeah, I noticed that too. But they're not the kind of people who'd bail without notice, so it should be fine. Saying that, Sarah tried to put on a brave face, but deep down she was clearly anxious because she had been restless for a while. Then 7 p.m. arrived, which was the agreed time. In the end, no one showed up at my restaurant except for Sarah. What's going on? Sorry, Dad. I'm going to make a quick call. Saying that, Sarah hurried out of the restaurant. A welcome party that's supposed to be a celebration is already feeling pretty gloomy. Is this really going to be okay? While I was worrying about the situation, Sarah frantically called one of her colleagues. Hello? Where are you right now? Today is supposed to be the welcome party, right? Huh? Where am I? I'm on my way to the party venue. Wait, right now? Didn't we agree that the party starts at 7 p.m.? Yeah, I heard that. But after you left yesterday, Anthony said the venue and time had changed. He said he'd let you know later. What? I didn't hear anything. Let me call Anthony. All right. I'm just as confused as you are. After ending the call with her colleague, Sarah quickly dialed Anthony's number. Hi, Anthony, it's Sarah. I heard that after I left yesterday, the venue and time for the welcome party changed. What's going on? Someone spilled the beans. Huh? Excuse me. I feel like I'm completely out of the loop. Could you please explain the situation from the beginning? By the way, who told you that? Is that really important right now? Fine. If you're that insistent, I'll tell you then. Anthony started talking, sounding almost defiant. Apparently, the decision to change the venue and time of the welcome party was entirely Anani's own doing. The reason for the change was that Anthony felt it was arrogant of Sarah to book such an expensive restaurant. On top of that, he wasn't really enthusiastic about the welcome party in the first place. So I'm canceling the 30 reservations for everyone except you. Wait, no, that's a problem. Plus, what about the others? Stop whining. I said it's canceled, and that's that. With that, Anthony abruptly hung up. While I continued preparing for the party, I waited for Sarah to return. When she finally came back inside, she looked completely drained. Are you okay? You look really down. What happened? Yeah, I just talked to Anthony. I'm really sorry, but he said they're canceling everyone except me. Barely able to force out the words, Sarah explained that the other 30 people had canceled at the last minute. What can I even say? I guess I was just getting carried away on my own. Maybe I was just being foolish, thinking everyone was as excited as I was. I'm really sorry, Dad. At that point, unable to hold back anymore, Sarah burst into tears. I'm so sorry, Dad. You even reserved the whole place for us. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault, Sarah. Nobody could have predicted this. I tried to comfort her, but Sarah just kept apologizing over and over. Since it was her idea, I could clearly see how much responsibility she felt. I really don't like doing this, but thinking that, I decided to make a call. The person I called was David. He's a high school friend of mine, and believe it or not, he's the current CEO of the publishing company where Sarah works. I only found out about this recently. We had a high school reunion, and it came up by chance during the catch-up. Hey David, long time no speak. John, wow, it's been a while since the reunion, 6 months ago, right? Yeah, that's right. How have you been? Doing well, thanks. It's rare for you to call me. What's up? Actually, I just had a big group reservation cancel on me. I had the place booked out, and now it's completely empty. If you're free, why don't you drop by? I'll treat you. Seriously? Sounds good. I've got a bit of work left, so I can be there in about an hour. Is that okay? Yeah, I'll be waiting then. An hour later, this time keeping his promise, David arrived at the restaurant. Since the sudden appearance of the CEO, Mr. King, caught her off guard, Sarah was completely confused. I took a moment to explain my relationship with David to her. All right, David, I called you here partly because you're my friend, but there's actually another reason. Another reason? I decided to tell David everything that had happened. I explained that the sudden cancellation of the group reservation was caused by someone from his company. Moreover, the reason for the cancellation was purely out of personal spite. You're serious? Completely. But I know this isn't your fault. It's not a company-wide event, just a single department. Still, I need you to do something for me. Do something. I want you to bring Anthony from the planning department, the one responsible for the cancellation, here right now. If you can't, I'm prepared to cancel our ongoing tie-up project. I'm sorry, but I can't work comfortably with your company while my daughter is unfairly treated like this. Wait, hold on. If that project falls through, the losses could be enormous, maybe even $50 million. I understand, but I can't collaborate with a company where someone in a managerial role cancels agreements on a whim out of personal feelings. That's my decision as a company leader. All right. I'll call him right now. You haven't changed a bit, still as quick to act as ever. While David called Anthony, Sarah looked at me with a troubled expression. Dad, you really didn't have to go this far. No. When things like this happen, it's better to deal with them promptly rather than dragging them out. Handling issues as soon as they arise is an important skill for working adults. Is that really how it is? That's how it works. Also, don't worry, I won't mention that you're my daughter. As we were talking, David finished his call and turned to me. It seemed he successfully summoned Anthony, who would arrive in about 30 minutes. Half an hour later, Anthony appeared, looking slightly nervous after being summoned directly by Mr. King. David immediately confronted him about the cancellation. I heard from the restaurant staff that you canceled the reservation on your own accord. Care to explain? Well, I couldn't help it. You see, one of my subordinates said at the last minute that they preferred a different place. I tried to stop them, but, wow, to think you'd shift the blame so shamelessly. So you're saying you canceled the reservation just because one subordinate suggested another place? No, not just one. Actually, most of my subordinates said they wanted a different venue. I really wanted to accommodate their wishes since it was a welcome party. That's not true. Unable to tolerate Anani's pathetic excuses any longer, Sarah reached her limit. She interrupted Anani's rambling and tried to reveal the truth. What's not true? Everything you're saying, Anthony. Earlier, you yourself said you canceled because you didn't like the restaurant. What? Stop making things up. I'm not making it up. Then where's your proof? Without proof, it's just your word against mine. I have proof. Saying that, Sarah pulled out her phone and played a recording. The recording was of the earlier conversation between Sarah and Anthony. It was filled with Anani's selfish remarks, leaving no room for doubt. I knew he seemed like trouble, but this is on another level, almost impressive in a twisted way. With such undeniable evidence, Anthony couldn't come up with any more excuses. Anthony, care to explain this? After listening to the recording, David spoke to Anthony in an eerily gentle tone. It's not my fault. What did you just say? It's not my fault. It's Sarah's fault. She always pushes ahead with her ideas without considering the team. What's wrong with feeling resentful towards someone like that? Now you're just lashing out. Truly hopeless. No, I never intended to be selfish with my work. People who cause trouble never realize it. You're just like the rest, thinking you're doing everything right when you're actually causing problems. I don't think that's right. Suddenly, a woman's voice echoed from the entrance. There stood about 30 men and women catching their breath. Wait, are those Sarah's colleagues from the planning department? Weren't they supposed to have canceled? Sarah seemed just as shocked, staring at the scene as if she had seen a ghost. You guys, why are you here? Sarah called us. And besides, your behavior seemed really suspicious. What do you mean? One of Sarah's colleagues started explaining how they ended up here. When Sarah called earlier, they had a feeling something strange was going on. They were already doubtful about the sudden change in the party's venue and time. Then, during the welcome party, they noticed Anthony leaving the venue in a suspicious hurry after taking a phone call. So they decided to follow him. We had no idea it would turn out like this, though. You followed me? Don't you guys have any sense of propriety? Right back at you. What? Also, nobody here thinks that Sarah has been selfish at work. On the contrary, she always checks with everyone and proceeds carefully. Other colleagues nodded in agreement. Anyway, we'll discuss your actions later. You can go home for now. Exposed and scolded by Mr. King, Anthony couldn't handle the pressure and quickly left, practically running away. Everyone, don't cry anymore. Let's just enjoy the rest of the welcome party. Encouraged by her colleagues and the new employees, Sarah was comforted as tears welled up in her eyes. She's really become someone they all look up to. Feeling proud of Sarah's growth, I brought over the platters that she had prepared despite the trouble earlier. Please enjoy the rest of the welcome party to the fullest. With my words, the room erupted in excitement. From that point on, the welcome party continued in high spirits, with David joining in as well. A few days later, it was revealed that Anthony, the root cause of the incident, had been fired after numerous wrongdoings came to light, including abusive leadership, stealing ideas, and even embezzlement. The root of this incident was his resentment towards Sarah because her achievements had outshone his own. He had planned to isolate her during the welcome party as a form of petty revenge. So basically, he blamed others for his own lack of ability. Yeah, I thought about giving him a piece of my mind, but honestly, I'm just too fed up to bother. Well, it was an unfortunate situation, but at least you learned something important, which is that nothing good happens if you focus only on your own gain without considering others. Never ends well. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. I never thought I'd take someone like him as a cautionary example. The key is to always consider how your actions affect others. In the end, work is about building relationships with people. As long as you keep that in mind, you'll be just fine. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Saying that, Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Even though it was unexpected, this whole situation helped Sarah grow. I guess that's just how life works sometimes. With that thought, I continued to work hard on making the collaborative project with Sarah's company a reality. My name is Marcus Cole, and I've spent the last 35 years of my life working for a company that, to the outside world, appeared to be a model of success and innovation. But if you'd asked anyone in the building, especially the higher-ups, they'd tell you I was just another faceless cog in the machine. A senior systems analyst, reliable but not flashy. I did my job, kept things running smoothly, and stayed out of the spotlight. The truth is, I wasn't always this way. When I first walked into that office at the age of 23, fresh out of college with a shiny degree in computer science, I had big dreams. I imagined myself climbing the corporate ladder, making a real impact, and eventually leading a team that would revolutionize the company. But reality has a way of dulling even the most ambitious dreams. I started out in the IT department, troubleshooting network issues and installing new systems. As the years passed, I became an expert in the company's infrastructure, an invisible hand that ensured everything operated without a hitch. Promotions came slowly. They always did for someone like me. After all, I wasn't a people person. I didn't play golf with the CEO or show up at every company party. My job was to be good at what I did and nothing more. By the time I hit 50, I realized that my career had plateaued. I had worked diligently for decades, yet when it came time for recognition, The rewards were few and far between. But I kept going. I had responsibilities, my mortgage, my kids in college, the steady need for income. I thought, maybe one day things would change. Maybe one day, my dedication would be acknowledged. And then came the email, the one that told me my retirement was finally coming up, the one that made me realize the truth. I had worked my entire life for a company that would toss me aside the moment I was no longer useful. Retirement day came faster than I expected. I had spent the last month wrapping up projects, preparing my successor, and trying to come to terms with the fact that I was walking away from a job that had been my entire life for so long. On paper, retirement was supposed to be a moment of celebration, a recognition of a career well spent. But in reality, it felt more like a quiet dismissal. The day before my last day, I was called into the president's office. Richard Weston, the man who had been running the company for the past 15 years, greeted me with his usual cold smile. He had always been a master of pretense, playing the role of the charismatic leader when cameras were rolling, but anyone who spent time with him knew that behind the polished exterior was someone who didn't care about much beyond his own success. "Marcus," he began, without looking up from his papers. "Tomorrow is your last day, and I just wanted to let you know that your departure isn't exactly something we're celebrating around here." I was used to his tactless remarks. Weston was always blunt, but there was something different about his tone that day, something colder. Maybe it was because I was leaving. Maybe it was because I was one of the last few from the original staff to go. "We've looked over your records," he continued. "And to be honest, I can't justify the bonus. You haven't exactly been the most proactive employee, have you?" I swallowed hard, trying to mask the frustration bubbling inside me. I had expected something like this, but it still stung. The countless hours of late nights, solving problems, and making sure the company's entire system didn't crash, all forgotten in favor of this man's narrow, short-sighted view. I could feel the blood rushing to my face, but I kept my composure. "I understand," I replied flatly, keeping my tone neutral. Weston's eyes gleamed with an almost predatory satisfaction. "I'm sure you do. I won't be spending a dime on a worthless employee like you. Your retirement package is already processed. Consider it a farewell." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, as though his words were the final verdict. For a moment, I felt a surge of anger, at the injustice, at the way he had reduced my entire career to nothing more than a number on a spreadsheet. But I didn't show it. Instead, I simply nodded. "Got it," I said, a cold resolve settling over me. I stood up and walked out of his office without another word, my heart pounding in my chest. I had always believed in doing the right thing, in playing by the rules. But the truth was, I had given my best years to this company, and in return, they had given me nothing. The night before my retirement, I sat alone in my small apartment, the silence heavy around me. I hadn't felt this empty in years, like I was just waiting for something to happen. I could hear Weston's words echoing in my mind. Worthless employee. The phrase cut deeper than I cared to admit. I had spent decades helping this company grow, ensuring its systems ran smoothly, and now, after all that time, I was nothing more than a liability. As the hours passed, an idea began to form. One that started as a fleeting thought, but soon consumed me entirely. What if I left with more than just my memories? What if, on my final day, I could show Weston and the others exactly who they had underestimated all these years? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had worked in the IT department long enough to understand the company's systems inside and out. I knew the vulnerabilities, the backdoors, the hidden codes. I had access to everything. And while I had always followed the rules, there was one thing my contract had made abundantly clear. Upon my departure, I had the right to delete my work and erase any trace of my contributions. It wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't about being petty. It was about sending a message. I had given my time, my energy, my knowledge to this company, and in return, they had dismissed me like I was nothing. But they didn't realize that I had the power to leave my mark, not just in the systems, but in the company's very foundation. I spent the night preparing. I logged into my computer, making sure everything was ready for the next day. The tools I needed to access the company's core systems were all in place. I wasn't going to destroy everything, not at first. I wasn't going to burn the building to the ground. No, I was going to do something far more calculated. By morning, I was no longer angry. I was calm, too calm. I had made my decision, and now, It was time to execute it. The day began like any other, with me walking through the familiar hallways, exchanging quiet pleasantries with the few people who remained in the office. I nodded at the few colleagues who had come to wish me well, but in the back of my mind, I was focused on the task ahead. Weston's snide comments, his dismissal of my years of hard work, they fueled me now. I wasn't going to let him, or anyone else, get away with it. At noon, I received a message from HR, something about a small farewell gathering in the break room. I almost laughed. A gathering. It was a formality, a token gesture to appear gracious when, in reality, they had no interest in me as a person. It was a chance for them to pat themselves on the back for sending me off with a handshake and a good luck. I ignored the invitation. My work, the one that mattered, was already in motion. I slipped into my office for the last time, locking the door behind me. The familiar hum of computers and the soft clack of keyboards filled the air, but I was in another world. I connected to the company network, bypassing the usual firewalls with ease. I had worked here too long not to know every shortcut, every loophole. I accessed the core systems, the ones that held all of the company's proprietary data, its confidential information, and, most importantly, its records of me. Then, with a few simple keystrokes, I began my work. First, I wiped the archives. Every email, every document, every project I had worked on over the years, gone. Next, I erased the backup files. I watched as the system slowly ground to a halt. Each click, each deletion, a small victory. The power was in my hands now, and I wasn't going to stop. The clock was ticking, and as I watched the minutes slip by, the weight of what I was doing began to settle in. I had reached the final step, the most dangerous part of my plan. I could hear voices in the hallway, the faint murmur of conversation as people went about their business, oblivious to the chaos I was unleashing. I was the last to leave for the day, the final cog in the machine. I could almost hear Weston's voice in my head. Worthless employee. He didn't know it yet, but I was about to prove how wrong he was. With one last deep breath, I accessed the system's core server, something that no one else in the company had dared to touch. This wasn't just about erasing files. No, this was about removing the foundation of the company's infrastructure, the very framework that kept everything running smoothly. The servers were the lifeblood of the company. If I could wipe them clean, it would cripple the entire operation. I paused for a moment, just before pressing the final button. I thought about everything I had sacrificed over the years. I thought about my family, my career, the years of hard work that had ultimately amounted to nothing more than a slap in the face. My contract gave me the right to do this. I had followed the rules, worked by the book, and now, I was going to leave a mark on this company that would last long after I was gone. In the deepest corners of my mind, I knew what I was doing would have consequences. People would lose their jobs, the company would suffer, and Weston would likely never fully understand why I did it. But in that moment, none of it mattered. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just cold, calculating, and ready to strike. With one final press of a key, I activated the command that would erase the server data. I watched as the system went dark, and then, as if in a delayed reaction, the entire network began to shut down. Slowly at first, and then faster, the files vanished, the records disappeared, and with each passing second, the company's heart stopped beating. I leaned back in my chair, a wave of calm sweeping over me. The system had been wiped clean. Weston's empire, built on my hard work, my loyalty, and my sweat, was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. But just as quickly as the feeling of victory settled in, my phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text from my old friend, Doug, who had been with the company nearly as long as I had. "Hey, Marcus, you've got to see this. Weston's furious. His assistant just called me. The systems are down. He has no idea what's going on. No one does. What did you do?" I smiled to myself, leaning back in the chair again, savoring the moment. "Just making sure they remember my name," I typed back. Then I shut off my phone and stood up, straightening my tie as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The company would never be the same. I turned off the lights, packed up my things, and left my office for the last time. My resignation had been completed. My final act was done. As I walked through the corridors, the familiar faces of employees who didn't even know what was happening gave me no reason to pause. I could feel the weight of their ignorance, but I also knew they wouldn't understand. They weren't a part of the decisions that led to this. As I walked past Weston's office, I paused, looking through the glass. He was in there, shouting at someone, his face red with frustration. But that didn't matter anymore. It was too late for him, too late for the system, and too late for everyone who had ever underestimated me. The morning after my departure, I sat in the comfort of my own home, watching the sunrise filter through the blinds. The silence was peaceful, almost too quiet. I had expected to feel something, guilt, perhaps, regret, but all I felt was a profound sense of relief. It was over. I had finally taken control of my own story, no longer bound by the expectations or limitations that the company had placed on me for so long. The phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Doug. "Marcus, what the hell happened?" Doug's voice was thick with disbelief. "The entire system's down. Weston's blaming everyone, but he doesn't know who's behind it. The IT department is scrambling to fix things, but they're in chaos. You've really done it this time." I paused before responding. "It's not about them, Doug. It's about me. About what I deserve. You know how long I've been doing this job, how much I gave. And for what? A zero bonus? A pat on the back as I walk out the door? I couldn't let them just brush me aside without showing them who they were dealing with." Doug sighed. "I get it, but you've really turned the place upside down. No one's going to forget this. Weston won't either." I smiled faintly. "Good. I don't want him to forget." I set the phone down and thought about my next steps. The company would eventually recover. After all, it was a giant with deep pockets. But for a brief moment, I had made them feel vulnerable. I had proven that their systems, no matter how solid they appeared, were only as strong as the people behind them. People like me, who could be discarded without a second thought. But there was more to this than just getting back at them. My actions had opened my eyes to something I hadn't realized before. The company had defined me for years. It had set the terms for my success, for my worth, based on their arbitrary measures of performance and value. In the end, they had no control over me. I was the one who had built the systems that made their empire run. I was the one who knew its weaknesses. I had the power all along, but it took this final moment for me to see it. I could have walked away quietly, accepted my pitiful bonus, and retired with the same sense of resignation I'd felt for the last few years. But I chose something different. I chose to redefine what success meant for me. It wasn't about the bonus, the title, or the recognition from people who would forget my name as soon as I was gone. It was about owning my life, about making a stand, even if it was the last thing I ever did in that office. 2 weeks later, I received an email from Weston's assistant. The company had restored most of the systems, and they were offering me a substantial retirement package as a gesture of goodwill. But it didn't matter. I had made my point. The power of their position, their control over me, had shattered the moment I walked out that door. And so I moved on. I spent my time with family, took long walks in the park, and explored the hobbies I had abandoned over the years. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to do, and I found peace in it, peace that I hadn't felt in decades. Weston and the others? They never truly understood why I did it. They never knew the depth of my frustration or the years of pent-up resentment. But that was the point. I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. I had spent too long being defined by someone else's version of success. But in the end, I realized that I had always been the one who held the power. I had simply waited for the right moment to use it. I was supposed to attend a crucial business meeting with Daniel, a younger department manager, that day after returning from my abroad assignment for the first time in years. However, Daniel's words were genuinely startling. "This older person is new to us. To be honest, he is utterly worthless." Daniel presented me to our client's division manager, Stephen, in this way. Daniel had always been the kind of person who denigrated others, a truly terrible individual. His rudeness wasn't the first time. However, was it really necessary for him to behave that way in front of Stephen? I was enraged. However, Daniel would shudder and pass out the moment he realized who I truly was. "I'm 35 years old, and my name is Michael. I'm still unmarried and relish the independence that comes with being single. It's not that I don't have feelings for ladies. I just put my all into my career and came to this conclusion. Perhaps I've never had a girlfriend because I'm a quiet person. I've never had good interpersonal communication skills. As a result, I didn't have many childhood pals. I was frequently made fun of the neighborhood kids for my personality. My identical brother Grant would always defend me in those situations. Hey, Give Michael some space. That's how Grant always defended me. I would still have my best ally even if I had no pals. Knowing that alone gave me the willpower to continue. Grant, in contrast to me, was gregarious and had many acquaintances. People have always stated that our personalities couldn't be more different, despite the fact that we are identical twins and appear absolutely alike. Since I've always had trouble with everything I've tried, I frequently felt jealous of Grant's abilities. I told him once, "You've got it easy. You have a ton of friends and are skilled at everything. Life will always go your way, I wager. I simply have no hope in contrast." Grant merely chuckled. "What are you discussing? I may be skilled with my hands, but I'm a lousy student. The intelligent one is you. You need to have greater self-confidence." For the first time, I understood that even Grant, who was always happy, had his own problems. Ever since, we have done everything together. We even entered the workforce together after graduating from college. Even though we ended up working for different companies, we consistently discussed our desire to collaborate in the future. I was hired by a business that sells auto parts. I majored in engineering in college since I've always been interested in it. Thus, this business was a wonderful fit for me. I was put in charge of the development division. Through constant trial and error, I worked on developing and fabricating parts every day. Our department had a laid-back, pleasant vibe, and I was surrounded by nice coworkers and a manager who genuinely cared about his staff. I was able to perform my duties with assurance and comfort because of the folks I worked with. This continued for a few years until my boss summoned me into his office one day and gave me a piece of paper. A notice of personnel reassignment was sent out. I was astounded when I saw it. It stated that I will be working in a plant abroad. My boss put a hand on my shoulder as I stood there stunned. "The foreign facility will greatly benefit from your skills. I sincerely hope you'll take the job." Well, overseas? Uncertainty overcame me, but I also wanted to see if my abilities would translate to another country. I therefore made the decision to consult Grant. If he were in my position, I wanted to know what he would do. I was surprised by what he said. "Around the world? That sounds fantastic. I wouldn't think twice if it were me. This is your opportunity to develop." He was correct. Despite my nervousness, I understood that working overseas would help me in the future. I therefore agreed to the overseas assignment. Grant took the day off work to see me go on the day I was leaving. "Michael, you've got this." "Thanks, man." Grant encouraged me as I got on the plane and departed for another nation. It was a 3-year assignment. I made a self-promise to give it my all during that period. I had trouble with the language at first. What the local workers at the factory were saying was incomprehensible to me. When a few months, I was able to speak with them when I pushed myself into my studies. Working at the plant became very pleasurable after that. 3 years had become 5 before I realized it. I felt I could work there indefinitely since I truly like it. However, headquarters informed me that I would have to return to Japan in the 6th year. I had no choice but to quit the factory, even though it was difficult to say goodbye to the local employees. It was a directive from above. I was resolved to put all I had learned overseas into practice when I returned to Japan. Japan felt rather quiet in comparison to other countries. I made the decision to greet everyone at headquarters first. I experienced a surge of nostalgia when I entered the headquarters building and saw that everything was just as it had been. However, I was taken aback when I entered the components development division. 6 years later, nothing in the office was the same. Everything was entirely different. Only a few of faces were recognized, and the department manager was unique as well. A man approached me as I stood there in awe of how much had changed in just 6 years. "You're Michael, returning from a foreign country. This department's manager is me, Daniel." When I saw Daniel's face, I was unable to conceal my surprise. I could surely know that face. Daniel also stared at me as I stood there dumbfounded. Then, grinning, he scoffed and uttered, "Oh, it's you. You're the useless twin, right?" I fell silent at his words. The truth was, Daniel used to live near me when I was younger, and I had painful memories I couldn't forget. Back then, I was shy and always clung to Grant. And Daniel, who was 3 years younger than us, would constantly tease me. "You two look exactly the same. It's creepy. Stop hanging out together just because you have the same face. Shut up. Get out of here." Grant would always step in and chase Daniel off. But one day, something happened. While I was walking alone without Grant, I ran into Daniel. "Oh no, I have to get out of here." As that thought flashed through my mind, I lowered my head and tried to hurry away, but my feet got tangled, and I ended up falling hard to the ground. Why is my timing always so terrible? As I cursed myself and sat there frozen in embarrassment, Daniel walked over with a smug grin. Wow, you just tripped over right here? What is this, some kind of comedy skit? You really are hopeless. To hear something like that from Daniel, who was 3 years younger than me, I felt pathetic, completely miserable. I never wanted to feel that way again. So from that day on, I did everything I could to avoid crossing paths with Daniel. By the time I started middle school, Daniel had moved away to attend a prestigious combined junior and senior high school, so I no longer saw him. But the bitter memory never left me. And now, to be reunited with Daniel at work, it was a shock I never saw coming. My name is Michael, and yes, I'm the older twin. I look forward to working with you. I greeted him calmly, trying to stay composed, but Daniel just laughed. Can you believe it? I ended up becoming manager before you even though I'm younger. Well, I did graduate from a top school, and I'm way better at the job than you are. So it was bound to happen. Just make sure you're a good little subordinate and do what I say. With that, Daniel walked back to his desk. Unbelievable. I never imagined I'd have to work under someone like Daniel. But work is work. I'd prove him wrong through my performance. I made up my mind. As I sat at my desk, a woman named Emily who sat next to me spoke up. She hadn't been there 6 years ago, so she must have joined while I was away. Emily was a beautiful woman with strikingly large eyes. Michael, that's such a strong name. She spoke with a warm smile, maybe trying to ease my tension. Thank you. I just hope I can live up to it and protect someone someday. I smiled back. It was a simple exchange, but thanks to Emily's kind words, my nerves started to settle. But the moment didn't last. Soon, Daniel's voice boomed across the room. He clearly didn't like seeing Emily and me chatting. What's so funny over there? You're terrible at your job, so put that energy into working harder. Don't drag Emily down with you. He labeled me as incompetent without ever having worked with me. Our coworkers looked on, stunned. Why was he saying such things to me? I couldn't understand, but I didn't have the courage to argue back. Swallowing my pride, I quietly began working. Then I saw something that made my eyes widen. I glanced over at Daniel and saw that his eyes were shut. He was clearly dozing off. I was so shocked that I instinctively looked over at Emily. She looked exasperated. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "It's surprising, isn't it? But this happens all the time. You'll get used to it eventually." I had never seen a supervisor sleep on the job before. A manager should lead by example. How could someone in his position act like this? I was stunned, but whether Daniel was sleeping or not had nothing to do with me. I went back to my work. Eventually, Daniel woke up, yawned, and called my name. Now what? I walked over to his desk, puzzled, only to hear something unbelievable. "Hey, you're not busy, right?" That's all he had to say after calling me over. I felt my irritation rise. "Get me coffee." Daniel had just ordered me to go buy coffee. As I stood there in disbelief, he raised his voice even more. "Why are you just standing there? I want coffee. Go get it now." Was that cup of coffee really more important than the work he was interrupting? I couldn't understand it. But if I said anything, it would just make things worse. Reluctantly, I decided to go get his coffee. Just as I was about to leave the office, I heard Daniel's voice from behind. "Hey, I gave you a job to do since you looked bored. Be grateful." What on earth is he talking about? My coworkers looked just as appalled as I felt. I could only sigh. When I returned with the coffee, Daniel had an irritatingly smug grin on his face. What is this guy's problem? With that thought, I handed the coffee to Daniel. Then he said something that completely caught me off guard. "Too bad. This isn't the kind of coffee I like." What? If he had a specific preference, why didn't he go get it himself? He had no right to act like this after sending someone else. I was shaking with anger. But Daniel continued, completely unfazed. "Well, go buy another one. You really don't have any common sense, do you?" And then he tossed the coffee I had just bought into the trash. This was flat-out harassment. The office fell silent, and my coworkers looked at me with pity. If I raised my voice now, it would just give Daniel what he wanted. Telling myself this was just part of the job, I went to buy another coffee. I kept saying to myself, just get through this, and things will get better. But Daniel's behavior only got worse. How long was this going to go on? Every day, those thoughts weighed on me as I went to work, constantly on edge around Daniel. And this day was no different. I kept wondering, what's he going to say to me today? That's when Emily approached me. Daniel just called. He said he has plans and won't be coming in today. He also said to give all his work to you. What? You mean I have to do everything he was supposed to do today? I couldn't help but raise my voice. Emily looked genuinely sorry. Actually, Daniel always dumps his work on others whenever he decides to skip out. It's ridiculous. I was stunned. I didn't know why he was off, but for a department manager to dump all his responsibilities on someone else, it was absolutely unacceptable. I was absolutely furious. But if I was told to do it, I had no choice. I gave up my break time and finished all of Daniel's work. But the next day, when I arrived at the office, Daniel was handing out cookies to everyone. I couldn't help but wonder what got into him. Then he said something that left me speechless. Yesterday, I went on a hot spring trip with my girlfriend. Those cookies are good, right? I was at a loss for words. So while I was stuck doing his work, he was off relaxing in a hot spring. And after everything I did, he didn't even thank me. I started to seriously question his character. I knew better than to expect anything from someone like him. But if we had to work together, I just wished he would act responsibly. I couldn't help but feel that way. As the days of Daniel doing whatever he pleased continued, I began to feel mentally exhausted. That's when Grant invited me out for drinks. It was rare for busy Grant to invite me, so I gladly accepted. We made plans to meet up for the first time in a while. We met at a bar, and he was already there when I arrived. When he saw me, he looked shocked. "Michael, you look completely worn out. Are you okay?" His words made me realize just how tired I actually was. He looked at me with real concern. "Is it because of work after coming back from your overseas assignment?" I couldn't lie to Grant, so I told him everything about Daniel. He looked genuinely surprised. "I can't believe that kind of coincidence. He's still looking down on you? That's unforgivable." Grant was clearly upset, and no wonder. He never got along with Daniel. The reason was simple. Daniel had always treated me unfairly. He acts like he's better than everyone just because he went to a prestigious university, I said. Grant burst out laughing. "Well, that won't last long. A guy like that is bound to crash and burn without us even doing anything. Let's just sit back and watch." He said that as he sipped his drink. It had been a long time since I'd enjoyed a meal so much. Spending time with Grant, the one person who truly understood me, meant the world. We said we'd go for drinks again sometime and parted ways. Would Daniel really end up self-destructing like Grant said? Still, Grant was always right. So I decided to wait and see, just like he suggested. And then, the very next day, it happened. Daniel came in late because he overslept. His complete lack of motivation left me speechless. Yawning, he handed me some documents and told me to organize them. "We've got a meeting with Y Corporation coming up. For some reason, Mr. Irving wants me to bring you along. I have no idea why he'd want someone as useless as you there, but an order is an order. So you better prep those materials before then." With that, he returned to his desk. I immediately began reviewing the documents. They contained detailed information about Y Corporation. Once Daniel was out of earshot, Emily turned to me. "Y Corporation? That's huge. They're one of our most important clients, right?" She looked excited. Y Corporation is a major automaker that produces cutting-edge vehicles and has been doing business with our company for 13 years. We started supplying them from the very beginning. At first, they were just a small startup, but after releasing a line of advanced cars, they skyrocketed to the top of the industry. Thanks to that, they now sell all over the world and are our primary client. Our company's recent growth is largely thanks to Y Corporation. They're launching a new car model, right? This must be the meeting about supplying parts for it. Emily's eyes sparkled. This deal was rumored to be worth millions of dollars. It could make or break our company's future. Exactly. We have to make sure this meeting is a success. Saying that, I got to work compiling the materials. And then, the big day arrived. As soon as I got to the office, I reviewed the presentation materials again. By this point, I had memorized everything about the meeting. In business meetings, clients always tend to ask unexpected questions. This time, I wanted to be fully prepared so I could handle whatever they threw at me. Meanwhile, Daniel looked half asleep, yawning at his desk. Would today's meeting really go smoothly? I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. At the time, I had no idea that my fears would soon be realized. Daniel and I arrived at Y Corporation's headquarters. They've been our clients since the very beginning. This is going to be a breeze. You just sit there and listen to my presentation. Daniel looked completely relaxed. Meanwhile, I was so nervous my legs were shaking. He must have been feeling overly confident about this meeting. We waited in the reception room for the representative to arrive. White Corporation was truly impressive. Their building was several times larger than ours and impeccably maintained. No doubt it was thanks to Mr. Henderson's leadership that the company had come so far in just 13 years. As I was thinking about that, Stephen, the department head from Y Corporation, walked into the room. Daniel immediately handed him his business card and began introducing me. But what he said next was unbelievable. "We've got this new older guy. Honestly, he's completely useless." I never thought he'd belittle me in front of Stephen. Of all places, did he really have to act like that in front of a major client? Stephen's face twisted in discomfort at Daniel's comment. I was furious, but I forced myself to focus on the meeting. Then Daniel did something shocking. He started reading from the materials I had prepared. I was speechless. He hadn't prepared anything for the presentation. He had planned all along to just read what I put together. "Our company's parts are durable and hard to break." He was just reading straight off the page. This was no presentation. I sat in stunned silence. Sure enough, Stephen looked puzzled. Could you explain exactly how they're durable? Could you give a more specific example?" Stephen was absolutely right. Daniel's presentation lacked any substance. Of course it did. I had compiled the materials for internal reference, not for a presentation. And yet, Daniel was simply reading the materials word for word. If he had any real understanding of our company's products, he could have answered Stephen's question easily. But he couldn't. He was visibly shaken. I was speechless. Daniel didn't just know nothing about Y Corporation's products. He didn't even know our own. At this rate, the meeting was bound to fail. And if that happened, the consequences would be disastrous. I had no choice. I decided to give the presentation myself. I handed my business card to Stephen. Perhaps realizing how bad things were, Daniel said nothing to stop me. "Excuse me for interrupting, but I'll be giving the presentation from here on." With that, I began presenting without looking at any notes. But instead of listening, Stephen was staring at my business card. Oh no, he's figured it out. As that thought crossed my mind, Stephen began staring intently at my face. Daniel watched, clearly puzzled. Then finally, Stephen spoke. "Wait, are you by any chance the twin brother of Mr. Henderson?" "What?" Stephen stared at me with wide eyes. Daniel, thinking Stephen had made a mistake, burst out laughing. "Come on, Stephen. That's impossible. His twin was always an idiot. There's no way he could have become a president." But Stephen didn't laugh. He kept looking at me closely, tilting his head. Just then, the door to the meeting room burst open. "Stephen, Michael's my twin brother. See the resemblance." The room fell completely silent. Daniel was so stunned, he almost fell off the sofa. They really do look identical. I noticed it when I saw his last name matched Mr. Henderson's on his business card. Stephen broke into a bright smile. "No way. That screw-up Grant is the president of Y Corporation? That's got to be a mistake." Daniel raised his voice, clearly unable to accept what he was hearing, but his voice trembled. Then Stephen raised his voice in anger. "How dare you say something so rude? Grant is without question the president who built this company from the ground up." Grant glared at Daniel. "Stephen, this guy has always been disrespectful. There's no point in reasoning with him." Hearing Grant's words, Daniel stood frozen in place, his face completely pale. "No way. Grant is the president?" The always arrogant Daniel now shook like a frightened puppy. Yes, it was true. My twin brother Grant was the president of Y Corporation. He had loved cars since he was a kid and used to talk about building his dream car one day. That's why he enrolled in a university with a strong engineering program. After graduation, he founded Y Corporation. He struggled with funding at first, but through sheer persistence and hard work, he built the company into what it is today. Once the company was stable, Grant offered me a job, hoping we could work together. But at the time, I was about to go on an overseas assignment, so I declined. Mr. Irving, my current boss, is the only one at my company who knows that I'm Grant's twin brother. That's probably why he insisted I attend this meeting. Daniel now looked at me, clearly frustrated. It's not fair. I worked so hard to graduate from a top university, and he becomes a president without even doing that. Stephen's expression darkened. What are you talking about? I don't know where you went to school, but for your information, Mr. Henderson graduated from a far more prestigious university than you. What? A top university? Yes, he's a graduate of K University. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. His own alma mater ranked lower than K University. He never imagined Grant had graduated from Japan's most prestigious national university. We both graduated from K University. Daniel turned pale as he looked at the two of us. What? You two? Michael, you're AK University? You never said anything about that. He was clearly shaken. Yes, Grant and I had both graduated from the toughest university in Japan. We were determined to study engineering seriously, so we worked hard and got in on our first try. Grant raised his voice as he watched Daniel flailing in a panic. He had finally reached his limit with Daniel, who had looked down on us every step of the way. What difference does it make what university someone graduated from? That has nothing to do with you. What matters isn't the name of the school. It's whether you can apply what you learned to your job. He was absolutely right. A prestigious degree means nothing if you can't use your knowledge effectively in the workplace. Then Stephen, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. It seems Daniel hasn't applied anything he learned at university. Didn't they teach you that cutting corners at work is unacceptable? Your presentation today was the worst I've ever seen. Right on the heels of Stephen's words, Grant began to speak as well. I overheard a bit from outside, and honestly, it wasn't even a presentation. Are you underestimating my company? Daniel stood in silence, turning toward me as if begging me to say something to defend him. Why should I have to say anything for Daniel's sake? I was done cleaning up his messes. And then Grant delivered a shocking statement. I only want to work with companies that approach business sincerely. The only reason I agreed to work with your company was because Michael was there. But I no longer have a reason to continue this relationship. As of today, we're terminating our contract. I refuse to work with someone as dishonest and irresponsible as you. What? But we've had such a long relationship. Don't end it like this. Besides, if the contract is terminated, Michael will be in trouble too. Daniel shamelessly tried to use my name to save himself. He probably thought invoking his connection to the president's brother would help, but that was naive. No need to worry, Daniel. Huh? I'm quitting this company. Daniel stared at me in disbelief. Grant looked delighted as he spoke. Michael will be joining my company next month. I plan to have him work as director of sales. That means he'll outrank you. Although, to be honest, I'm not even sure your company will still exist by then. Daniel's knees buckled, and he collapsed on the spot. It was true. I had already decided to leave my current company. I had always dreamed of working with Grant, but never knew when it might happen. After returning from my overseas assignment, I had felt satisfied at my current job. Working on essential parts for vehicle production was deeply fulfilling. I thought maybe staying where I was, continuing in my current role, was the right path. But then Daniel came into the picture, and everything changed. I realized I couldn't work any longer under a self-centered, abusive boss. That was the turning point. And the final straw? The incident with the coffee. That incident was exactly what I needed. It opened my eyes. I wasn't working just to be bossed around by Daniel. I didn't want to stay at a company where someone like him could be in charge. So I told Grant how I felt and decided to join Y Corporation. I'll inform your company that the negotiation ended in failure. Now please leave, Stephen said firmly, dismissing Daniel, who was now completely deflated. Daniel slunk out of the building, head down. What happened next was astonishing. Daniel was officially demoted. The failed negotiation exposed his long-standing laziness and negligence at work. His unacceptable treatment of subordinates also came to light. To make matters worse, it was discovered he had been faking attendance records during frequent absences. He had done whatever he pleased. Daniel begged Mr. Irving in tears, but there was no way such behavior could be forgiven. He was reassigned to a remote factory. But with his oversized ego, he couldn't bear the humiliation and quietly resigned instead, or so I heard through the grapevine. A truly pathetic ending. It was the result of believing a fancy diploma was all he needed and putting no real effort into his career. Once Grant heard Daniel had resigned, he reopened business with our former company. He probably couldn't bring himself to permanently cut ties with a partner that had supported him since the beginning. That's just like Grant, kind and forgiving. As for me, I got re-employed at Grant's company as the head of the sales department. My dream of working alongside him finally came true, and I'm enjoying every day. Looking back, it's strange to think I never would have taken this path if I hadn't run into Daniel. And now, I'm officially dating Emily. I pursued Emily with everything I had. She was kind and beautiful. And eventually, we officially became a couple. Life is something we shape with our own hands. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm determined to keep building a life I can be proud of. You useless shit. My daughter ought to get a divorce from you. My dad-in-law, because I work from home. Tom treats me like I don't have a job. He has consistently acted aggressively against my wife, Ava, and me. This was his final opportunity to turn around. That was my objective when I reached out to him. I finally just said, I understand. You slowpoke, so if you get it, start acting on it. This appears to be your response. He ignored Tom's ongoing ranting and remarked, That's very disappointing. I ended the call. Tom contacted my cell phone several times the following day. It appears that the main family residents called him on this issue, which suggests that he was in a desperate situation. However, it was too late. His constant bothersome calls have been blocked by me. I'm a systems engineer at X's Systems, a significant IT company, and I'm 40 years old. My name is Henry. Our business specializes on creating IC solutions for educational settings, web teaching resources, and keyboard input software. You probably use X's Systems goods on a regular basis, even if you aren't familiar with the brand. X's Systems, which generated over $4.5 billion in sales during the previous fiscal year, is a cornerstone of social infrastructure. In addition to being a web producer, I began my career creating input software. At the moment, I work in the education support department developing educational systems. Our organization is putting a lot of effort into this field. Being acknowledged for my ability is truly satisfying. Even though the work atmosphere may be difficult at times and requires day and night effort. Since I got married and had a family 2 years ago, I've been especially passionate about my work lately. This year, my wife, Ava, turns 29. Her family has a distinguished history, owns multiple businesses, and is a powerful force in and of itself. I work for X's Systems, which is a part of the Hadley Group. Through an arranged marriage, I got to meet Ava, who is a lot younger than me. Kay Hadley, Ava's grandma, arranged our encounter after observing my commitment to my job. When we got married, I adopted Ava's family name, which is customary in well-known families, but I don't regret it. Ava is a beautiful woman, and I am thankful to have met her. But there's one thing that irritates me. Ava's relationship with her father, Tom, has never been good. Tom has had good control over Ava. It seems that Tom's refusal to allow Ava to deviate from her assigned duty has prevented her from pursuing her dream of a career in education since she was a little child. I've lived with Tom since our marriage, so I've seen directly how much power he has over Ava. Ava, a unique example of a refined and peaceful woman, seemed incapable of resisting her father. Kay took matters into her own hands since she was worried about her granddaughter's circumstances, which allowed us to get married. She attended the scheduled meeting as well. Tom has the worst opinion of me, possibly as a result of these circumstances. I'm almost a criminal to him because I took Ava away. I try to minimize conflict because I feel like he would follow us even if we moved away. I'm all right. More than everything, I want to release Ava from Tom's grasp, yet I can put up with irrational treatment. I was trying, but nothing was getting better. There was a movement started by the change in my workplace. I briefly switched to working mostly from home at X's Systems due to departmental reorganization and the construction of new buildings. I would have to confront this more directly than before. Henry, is this the demo screen for the new system? Ava asked. Yes, it's still in development, so we can't go public with it yet, I replied. While I was working in my study today, Ava brought me some tea for a break. Peering into the PC screen, she nodded to herself. I see you're controlling the eye movement to make it easier to move to the next screen. It seems like it would be easy for children to understand. Ava's comments were spot on. As a direct descendant of a prestigious family that has produced numerous business people, Ava is very talented. Being able to grasp the key points just by looking at the screen, she would definitely give clear and understandable lessons if she were teaching. It's truly a waste that she's bound by her parents and not allowed to work. Just as I was thinking this, the study door was abruptly flung open. Ava, how long are you going to dot on that man? Come out right now. Tom shouted. Father, I was just bringing Henry some tea. That man doesn't need your tea. Tom, with veins bulging at his temples, shouted angrily. He is Z's father and my father-in-law. He's currently 58 years old. He seems to be an executive at a subsidiary of the Hadley family's business. But although he's called an executive, he's always either off on so-called business trips that seem more like hospitality vacations or indulging in golf. I hate to say it, but it's a situation where calling him a salary thief wouldn't be out of line. Apparently, he used to be competent at his job, but it seems he's become numb to the prestige of the family name over time. I thought Ava shouldn't be yelled at anymore, so I assured her out of the room. Then Tom looked at me with disdain. Thinking you were something, using a computer as if you're a professional, even though you've been fired. Tom, as I've said before, this is remote work and I have not been fired from my company. Tom adamantly refuses to let me call him Dad. Likewise, he has never once called me by my name. Don't lie, you thief. I know the truth. You're always at home during the day, and then you sneak out at night. If that's not proof of being unemployed, what is? I work from my home office during the day. The reason I went out at night was due to a sudden call for support from my workplace. Although I admit that having no distinction between day and night is a problem, Tom is way too lacking in understanding remote work. It seems he views me as scum, pretending not to be fired, even though he was being so disliked due to prejudice. It makes it hard to know how to respond. You jobless good-for-nothing. You should just leave this house and Ava behind. Muttering to himself, Tom left the study. I leaned back in my chair and let out a deep sigh. A few days later, as usual, I was working from home and went down to the living room for a break. There, unusually, I came upon Ava and Tom arguing. Ava, wake up for once. He's no good. Father, you're always saying terrible things about Henry. He's not like that at all. Though her voice was soft, Ava clearly argued back. Tom seemed frustrated that Ava, who had always been obedient, wasn't listening to him lately. I stepped between them, of course, to stand up for Ava. Tom, please calm down. Stop raising your voice at Ava. You, Ava, thank you for speaking up for me, she said. It's okay. Here, go down and take a moment to relax. Ava seemed to have something to say, but I escorted her out of the living room. I then faced Tom. He was gritting his teeth, glaring at me fiercely. Ava's changed attitude is because you've been whispering in her ear, isn't it? I'll never forgive you. That's not true. It's because you, Tom, continue to overly control Ava. It's time you realize that. In my desire to protect Ava, my words grew heated. Trembling with anger, Tom suddenly pushed me. You think I'm the one restraining Ava? Ridiculous. There's no one in this world who understands Ava better than I do. It's that very attitude that's restraining her. I replied, fine. If you insist on saying that, I have my own plan. With that, Tom stormed out of the living room. I was somewhat taken aback, expecting more insults than that, but there was no way he would just back down quietly. The next day, it was a normal working day. I had planned a meeting with clients about the educational system we introduced last month. Meeting in person builds a different kind of trust than online meetings. Although online is convenient, some educators are not familiar with digital devices or systems and may feel resistant. Explaining the product usage and benefits carefully is also an important part of our job. I believe that these efforts lead to finding new clients. By the time the hearing was over, it was already evening. I was allowed to go straight home. I headed back, but at the front door, I noticed something was off. The key doesn't fit. The key that had worked fine in the morning now wouldn't fit the lock. I had a bad feeling. Just then, a voice called out from the second-floor balcony. What's the hurry? You look like a child who's been locked out, Tom. Don't tell me you. I won't let someone who's corrupting Ava across this threshold. There's no place for you in this house. Just leave, you incompetent. I couldn't believe it. He changed the locks while I was at work. What does Ava say about this? I asked. She doesn't want to see you. Poor thing. She must really hate living with you. Tom exaggeratedly shrugged. I called out Ava's name several times, but there was no response from inside the house. Something was clearly wrong. As I considered breaking a window to check inside, a message suddenly arrived on my phone. It was from Ava. I'm okay. Please contact me when my father is not around. The message included a phone number. Relieved that Ava was safe for now, I silently got into my car, leaving Tom laughing uproariously. I drove off. In a distant parking lot, I called the number Ava had given me. It was her family's home number. When she answered, she shared something shocking. While I was at work, Tom had ordered one of his subordinates to possibly take Ava back to her parents' house. The subordinate was a manager at the company where Tom was an executive. His repeated apologies made it clear he was someone who couldn't defy Tom. All this just to drive me out. Henry, please come to the Hadley residence today. There's a lot we need to discuss. Ava's words, laden with determination, made me nod, and I started the car. Ava's family home is the main house of the Hadley family, a distinguished family that leads some of the top businesses in America, serving as their headquarters, so to speak. The estate is correspondingly vast. It was my first visit to Ava's family home since we reported our marriage. Guided by someone who seemed to be a servant, I was directed not to the central building for receiving guests, but to the main house where the Hadley family members live. "Henry, are you all right?" Ava asked. "I'm relieved to see you. I was worried about you," I said. Ava greeted me at the entrance of the main house. Given that she had been possibly taken away, I was worried about what had happened to her. But thankfully, she seemed unharmed. "But why would Tom do something like this?" I asked. "I think he's trying to separate us. He said that a mongrel and incompetent man like me has no place in the prestigious Hadley main house. He expected that I would be turned away at the gate." I thought to myself that I had been guided here quite politely. Then, a woman came from the back. "Mongrel and incompetent? Really? Who is he to say such things?" she said. She stood straight, impeccably dressed in an elegant one-piece. I quickly greeted her. "It's been a while, Kay. I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused." "You needn't worry about that. Come in, please." Those were the welcoming words of Ava's grandmother, Kay. At 73, she showed no signs of her age. She is the current head of the Hadley family. I was led to the parlor and sat across from Kay, with Ava sitting next to me. "Earlier, you mentioned mongrel and incompetent. Who does he think he is speaking like that?" I asked with some exasperation. "Well, it's about time I tell you about Ava's stepfather, Tom," Kay began to explain. "It turns out Tom is not actually related by blood to Ava. He became part of the family through an adoption arrangement. So he is Ava's stepfather. Ava's biological father died in an accident before she was old enough to remember. Her biological mother, Mary, has always been frail and is currently recuperating in a facility. Concerned that the family line might end, the Hadley family welcomed Tom as a son-in-law when Ava was still young. At that time, Tom, a so-called energetic employee, seemed like he could lead the frail Mary and young Ava. It appears that judgment was a major mistake," Kay muttered with a heavy sigh. I looked at Ava. "Did you know about this? That Tom was your adoptive father." "This is the first I've heard of it. I only found out recently. The plan was to have a proper discussion once I came of age, but given the poor relationship I have with my father, my mother and grandmother were hesitant about when to tell me. If the rift deepened, I wouldn't know how my mental state would cope, nor what father might do next." "I see, that explains it. Perhaps Tom clings to Ava so much because he feels insecure about his position. As long as he controls Ava, he can feel like a part of the Hadley family," I said. "That's outrageous," Ava replied. Then, with a resolve in her voice, Ava said, "I can forgive my father for this. I'm not his puppet anymore. I want to make that clear to him." "Well said, Ava. You've become so strong. Maybe it's because you're with Henry," Kay said with a gentle smile. "Henry, could I ask for your help with something?" "Yes, I'll do anything I can. I want Ava to be free too," I answered firmly. Then, we began to plan our resistance against Tom. Ava was surprisingly proactive at this time. It seemed she couldn't tolerate what had been done to me any longer. Allowed to stay in the main house for a while, I called Tom the next morning with Ava by my side. This call was intended to be my final ultimatum. "Hello, Tom. This is Henry. I'm calling today because there's something important we need to discuss." "You again?" "It's useless to ask for forgiveness now. You are not suitable for Ava or the Hadley family. Know your place. Tom, your methods this time have been too rough. It's unforgivable to involve Ava like this. I'll say this only once. Apologize to Ava and change your ways." "Tom, you bastard. Are you with Ava right now?" he yelled. "Unforgivable. You good for nothing." Tom flew into a rage. He ignored my warning and continued unilaterally. "You jobless trash. Divorce my daughter. As long as you're around Ava, I'll keep tearing you away from her." His yelling was so loud that Ava heard everything clearly. I nodded at Ava. She nodded back firmly. I responded, "Understood. If you understand, then act on it. You slowpoke. Don't think you can rely on the main family. This is all your fault. You're the one to blame for everything. You pay all the alimony. You understand. I see that this is your response." "That's very disappointing, Tom," I said, ignoring his continued shouting. I hung up the phone. Ava spoke up. "Leave the rest to me. It may be too late, But are you sure you're okay with this? It doesn't seem like your style, I asked. No problem. Grandma is with me. Besides, I want to show that I've changed since meeting you, Ava said with a bright smile. The next day, as I was driving to work, I noticed a call from Tom. Ignoring it, my phone kept ringing nonstop. It was an absurd amount of calls. The main family has probably contacted Tom to question him about this incident. He probably hadn't anticipated that his demands for our divorce would reach the main family. The next day, he seemed quite desperate from the incessant amount of calls, but it was too late for him. I decided to block his number. Several days later, thanks to Kay's generosity, I was staying at the Hadley main house for a while. The staff was attentive, providing me with everything I could need. Still, I couldn't take their kindness for granted. That day, I headed to the office to gather necessary documents for the plan. I also needed to overcome the fact that I was temporarily unable to use my home PC. Fortunately, my home PC was locked and necessary information was saved in the cloud, so there was no worry about Tom misusing it. Having finished my tasks, I returned to the Hadley main house. Tom was standing at the entrance of the mansion, arguing with a servant. It seemed he was complaining about not being allowed on the property. When he noticed me in the car, he marched straight toward me. You? Why are you here? This is the Hadley main house. It's no place for jobless trash like you. And what are you doing here? Tom asked, his voice seething with anger. I asked him calmly, "What is it, Tom?" My calmness seemed to infuriate him. He slammed his hand on the driver's side door, ignoring my calls. And you dare to spread lies about me to the main family? Just watch. Once you're divorced from Ava and back to being a nobody, I'll crush you easily. Now get out of here, you trash. I'm afraid I don't understand what you're saying, and I no longer need to listen to your lies, I replied, ignoring his continued rage. I drove the car onto the property as usual, and a servant courteously guided me in. Tom was taken aback. Hey, why are you letting him in so easily? If he goes through, let me through too. Move. I'm sorry, but without permission, I cannot allow you to enter, the servant said. Damn it. Why? Why is he treated better than me? Tom shouted. Even with the windows up, I could still hear him yelling as I parked the car and headed toward the main house. Kay was standing at the entrance. Welcome back, Henry. I heard the commotion. He must have tried to force his way in. Yes, I said. How is Ava doing? She seems to have made up her mind. She finally looks like she truly belongs to the Hadley family. Kay replied. That's thanks to you, Henry. I shook my head. Ava is the remarkable one. Breaking free from years of suppression is no small feat. I've just been supporting her. Since getting married, I've been so busy with work that Ava has been my support. Now it's my time to support her in pursuing what she wants to do. I gripped my briefcase tightly. Kay noticed and nodded. It seems you've managed to gather the necessary documents. Yes, here they are. Good. Today, many of the family's key members are here. That man probably came knowing this too. It's a good opportunity. Let's start with the plan we discussed. Kay instructed a servant to direct Tom to the guest building for visitors. Henry will join the family meeting as well. Is that all right? Of course. Ava has become dependable, but having you by her side will surely reassure her, Kay said with relief. I nodded firmly. A few minutes later, in the Hadley family's large reception room, Kay and other important family members lined up. Among them were executives from X Systems. I nodded silently to the executives and sat next to Ava. Tom sat alone at the lowest seat, seemingly not expecting to be brought before the Hadley family's dignitaries. Though initially blustering, now he sat silently, frequently wiping sweat from his forehead. Then Ava stood up and greeted the assembled group politely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here despite your busy schedules. Today, I have something important to discuss regarding my father, Tom. Her tone was dignified and commanding. Many people here had known Ava since she was young, and they narrowed their eyes with admiration at how much stronger she had become compared to before. This showed how much she was loved by those connected to the Hadley family. Ava took a deep breath. Recently, I was coerced by Tom to divorce my husband under the pretense that a jobless trash like me shouldn't be with him. A murmur of, "Oh," was heard from one of the X Systems executives. He was aware of my work performance, and his gaze turned sharply toward Tom, causing Tom to flinch. Ava continued her accusation. I truly love my husband. He has supported me through my moments of weakness. Yet Tom tried to separate me from him and even locked us out of our home. Neither my husband nor I can return to our home right now." The looks from the dignitaries grew increasingly stern, and sweat poured down Tom's face like a waterfall. His body seemed as if it was on pins and needles. "I have lived under Tom's control for too long, and I've reached my limit. Today, I gathered you all here to share my feelings and my situation." "Wait, Ava, that's a misunderstanding. Everything is that man's fault." Tom suddenly pointed at me and raised his voice, setting up such a scene. "It must be his instigation, right? There's no way I would do something so presumptuous." "Presumptuous?" Ava murmured, and Tom fell silent. I spoke up. "Tom, these are Ava's true feelings. She has been suffering under your presence for a long time. She finally gathered the courage to express her feelings, and you dismissed them as presumptuous." "You? What do you know about Ava?" Tom shouted, grinding his teeth. Ironically, his words only highlighted to the dignitaries that he didn't understand anything about Ava. Ava no longer met Tom's gaze and addressed the assembled dignitaries politely again. "Please, everyone, I ask for your appropriate judgment on him." It was an unexpected counterattack from a doctor long constrained. The unyielding stares from those of higher status than himself made Tom completely flustered, but the real matter was yet to begin. "Let us now confirm the agenda for today." Kay, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "About Tom Hadley. Here, could someone inform us of his contributions?" One of the executives stood up with documents in hand. "Tom is currently an external consultant for AG Trading. However, his actual contributions over the last few years are minimal. He has repeatedly used company hospitality funds under the guise of training and meetings to hop between cities. Furthermore, several managers who endured his oppressive leadership have either voluntarily resigned due to health issues or have requested demotions." The executive slapped the paper down. "From all this, his contributions to our group are virtually none, if not negative. Thank you for the clarification. Now, Tom, do you have anything to say for yourself?" "It's wrong. All of it. It's fabricated," Tom shouted. The executive, who had been accused of fabricating the report, glared at Tom. Kide, no valid counterargument. "Well then, let's make a decision for the separation of Tom from the family and his expulsion, and for placing Henry in his stead. All in favor, please raise your hands." "Huh." Tom was stunned. Truth be told, I was nearly surprised myself. The idea of me taking Tom's place was news to me. However, the dignitaries raised their hands effortlessly without hesitation. Among those present were executives from X Systems. "It's unanimous, then. I don't accept this," Tom shouted suddenly. "And to think that jobless trash is my replacement. It's absurd. He's more incompetent than I am. Whether he's incompetent or not, let's have him explain for himself," Kay said, giving me a nod. I pulled out documents from my briefcase and walked over to Tom. "Please take a look at this. These are the special sales figures for the team I lead, $60,000. The ICD service I'm involved with has been adopted by private schools in the city. Thanks to its positive reception, we've received several inquiries from clients interested in implementing the service, and sales are expected to continue growing." Tom's hands trembled as he held the documents. Kay said with a smile, $60,000 a month? That's about 10 times what you made in your heyday, Tom. And yet, you still consider Henry less capable than yourself. Do we really need an advisor who can't properly assess performance?" Tom could only grunt, his face red with anger. Kay then declared, "We will expel Tom Hadley from the family." A servant grabbed Tom's arm to lead him out of the mansion. I said to Tom, "You were a shackle on Ava. That ends today. From now on, Ava and I will live freely." "Damn it." Tom was forcibly removed, leaving behind a frustrated scream. Afterward, Tom was officially divorced, and Ava's adoption was announced. Without the family's backing, he was also dismissed from his advisory role at AG Trading. Having misused his power for so long, Tom was no longer capable of holding down a job and suddenly found himself without any income. His excessive pride became his downfall. He moved out on his own and is now living a destitute life in a cheap apartment, scraping by day to day. Meanwhile, I was appointed head of the Education Support Department upon the completion of the new company building. Leveraging my expertise, I have also been promised a future advisory post at AG Trading. Ava started working as a web instructor using the system I developed. Now engaged in the education sector she had always admired, she is thriving daily. Her refined demeanor and inherent abilities quickly made her a popular instructor. Ava, who had been constrained for so long, was finally living freely. I felt increasingly proud of my work, knowing that the system I created was helping someone so important to me. One day, Ava and I were invited by Kay to visit the family home. Sitting side by side on the peaceful porch, we enjoyed some tea. In contrast to our busy lives, this relaxed moment felt like the ultimate luxury. "This ordeal must have been troublesome for you," Kay said. "Not at all. In this day and age, arranging marriages for the sake of the family may seem like an outdated notion," I replied. "Henry, if you ever feel burdened by your relationship with Ava or us, you are free to live your life as you see fit." Ava looked at me, seeing that she didn't respond to Kay's offer, and suggested she might be afraid of imposing constraints like Tom did. My response was clear. "Then I'll continue to contribute more to the family. My feelings haven't changed since the day I met Ava." I took Ava's hand. "I have no regrets about marrying Ava. She is the most important woman to me, and that will never change." "Henry, I feel the same way." Ava smiled shyly as she squeezed my hand back. "Oh, you two are sweet." Kay gave a warm smile, and both of us returned the smile.